Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester Chats with writer and comic book legend D.G. Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there. Hello, and welcome back. It's that time again. Time for another Chichester Chats with myself, Lilith, and who's that other guy? I can't remember his name on the Chichester Chats here. Oh yes, Mr. DG Chichester. DG Chichester.
Sliders. We're gonna talk sliders. We're gonna talk this way the whole time. I sound like a bad Christian Bale.
Okay, enough of that.
Writer, James Bond super fan, and curator of the IKEA Museum. It is Mr. D. Chichester.
We could talk about MGM and their acquisition, or not MGM, their sellout to Amazon, and Amazon either ruining or doing something with the James Bond franchise. It's a whole other topic. Need to do it. You guys need to do a Bond Bond episode.
Oh yeah. We need the definitely.
But we're gonna need you to feature some of your favorite collectibles.
I do. I have a few. The briefcase got away from me. I almost had the briefcase once. Like there was a toy version of the briefcase from Rush with Love, and all these tricked out like things inside. And it was at a pawn shop or a junk shop in New York City when I was in college. And it was like, I mean, it was probably a relatively small amount in today's dollars, but then it seemed like insurmountable, and I struggled with it and finally said, no, I'm just gonna spend the money. When I got back there, it was gone, which was probably for the best.
Okay, I have so many questions. How did this comic book come about, and how did you get involved?
All right,
it's at Valiant, so
it was so you want this realities version, this multiverse version of things. So it's kind of the long way around, I think, as some things are. Things in quote unquote mainstream comics, as we know, hadn't gone so well. So I was not quite in my most miserable zone, but definitely wondering like kind of what was going to be next. And it was actually Magic the Gathering, I think, that was the bridge, to it, as I remember, because I had bought my brother's Magic starter sets for Christmas one year when Magic was just kind of starting to become a little popular, but was probably still just a little bit below, the main ridge of most public awareness types of things. And I kind of dug it. We played it over Christmas, but they went whole hog into it. They went like crazy for it, like buying the, extreme cards and all this kind of kooky stuff. So I found out that there was going to be a Magic, I don't know, convention, show, something in New York City, which ended up being in the basement of a church, or something like that, or a community center. It was still relatively small. So it was mostly people selling cards or playing the games or that kind of thing. But there was one booth from Acclaim, Valiant, whatever they were at that point, which was talking about the fact they were doing Magic comics. And I kind of got up the nerve or whatever to kind of go over and say, hey, we think Magic's cool. And by the way, I'm so-and-so, and I used to write comics. I was probably defeating at that point. Well, the editor, who I'm right now blanking on his name, lit up. It was not Jeff Gomez, but I think it was his assistant, lit up, knew who I was, thought this was great, and wanted me to talk to them next week, which I did. And that actually led to the Magic the Gathering comic that I did. So that was kind of my foot in the door with those guys. And from there, I started to have a relationship enough that we would talk about things. And I ended up doing a few of the Acclaim, Valiant comics or fill-in issues on some things. And this was part of the natural extension of that. They called me one day and said, hey, do you know the Sliders show? Which I did. And so would you like to pitch for it? So it wasn't an assignment. None of the Sliders books became like, oh, you're the Sliders writer, so we're just going to give it to you or whatever. They all were. I had to pitch the stories to them, and then ostensibly to the Sliders overlords, or I don't know how much involved Tracy Torme was after the opening, but it then became a pitch, and worked out pretty well. I mean, I was really happy to kind of play in that world, and now revisit it because they're actually a lot of fun. This was a very fun read for me.
So
Oh,
sorry, Phil.
no,
I
go
just
ahead.
have
Go
a
ahead.
question. So, were you not allowed to use the Chromax in the first two issues? Because like the villains seem very prototype of the Chromax. What were there like any like restrictions, or like were there like some guidelines about what you could do?
Um, I don't recall that exactly. I think that, when you see that story concept by like Tracy
Yeah,
Torme in the credit box, I
that's that's
think
that's
that,
like a post thing, right? Like that's
yeah,
after
I
the
think
fact.
like he did, and he was involved. I mean, I think we had a phone conversation. I believe, pretty sure we had a phone like meeting at one point, and chatted about the book. He did not offer me a writing assignment on the show. Even you know, none of my leads got taken up. Uh, but he was very
It was pretty
inve-
tumultuous on that show in the writers' room, though. So I think it's all
Probably,
nice.
I'm sure. But he was great. I mean, he was not Clive Barker level collaboration. Few people are, but he was very pleasant. He was really into it. He was into the comic. He was into the idea of doing the comics, and he was really into what they had created. Like this multi-verse world wasn't just a throwaway thing. They had thought about it, and you could tell this in the show when they're talking about like the Einstein Rosenberg Bridge and things. They at least had some, quantum physics
Well, he was a Star
understanding.
Trek writer too, so I think a lot of
Right.
that influenced it.
The techno babble, right, like comes
Yeah.
out of that in a really good way. So I think they
Well,
were
the first
doing
two
the
seasons anyway.
right. um, Although they would bring in who Navier, the guy they brought in as the science advisor was pretty sharp on Star Trek. But so I think we were talking about the Cro-Mags episodes, or the fact they were doing the Cro-Mags as like an invasion, type of thing in that conversation, and that was sort of like the leapfrog of doing a invasion story in the comic, but not the exact same thing, because the Zircurvians and the whole Flatland thing is is pure DG Chichester over investing in books about quantum physics, and there's actually a book called Flatland, and spending way more on like research than I probably got paid to do the book. But all those things I knew sort of tangentially in my brain, and then reading it again, I could see all my influences and Too Clever for My Own Good, stuff coming out of that. So the whole um, setup of them and what they are and how well it actually kind of worked out pretty well, as a set of somewhat unique-ish, villains. So I think it was taking that inspiration, as I recall, but wanting to do something unique and not just reflecting back the TV show.
So were there a lot of notes from like the TV side, or just like
No, there never were. I mean, there were notes sometimes, and I can't recall what they were, but I mean, occasionally there were corrective things, or refine this, or don't leave this out from editorial. But this was not Sequest level, we're can't cancel the book, or we cancel the show, and type thing. So there was never a heavy hand, and we never had another conversation with Tracy, or any of those folks. They may have on the editorial side, but we never had another creative discussion after that. The creative discussions were always around um, the comic, and what we were doing, and what the pitch approaches were, and such like that.
Okay, cool.
So I
I
never
think his
lost a
Sliders had
pitch.
such a good influence, though. A lot of people like kind of depict multiverse travel like it's kind of like a mainstream thing, and I don't think a lot of people give Sliders the credit of that visual look.
Oh, I agree. I mean, obviously, multiverse and quantum physics aspect of that type of bridge between worlds is, deeply baked in science fiction and speculative, type of thought in that way. But um, there's it was I feel like one of the first ones that really kind of plumbed it in a mainstream way on a regular basis. Now we could go back to the TV show and say, it took a wrong turn when it sort of traded, the tightly
Action
bound
for yeah.
relate, yeah,
And
or
that was a network decision, but
boobs and
I
stuff like
still love
that.
it through and through. Did you
Yeah,
have
I
a
mean,
favorite character from the TV show, and did it change when you started writing the comics?
just because I love John Rhys Davies, Arturio
Hard not to.
is hard not to, right? I mean, that's sort of hard not to do that. And I could tell even reading this, I loved his dialogue and his attitude, and I feel like I kind of captured, both really well. So probably he was my favorite. And I like that sort of burgeoning mentor relationship with Quinn and the brilliant mentor being outdone by the even more brilliant student. There's a lot of great dynamics there, and I think they had a really good chemistry on the show. I don't think it changed in the book because reading these over again, they're it's an ensemble piece, even though Quinn sort of leads. So I felt like I really gave everybody. Wade probably gets a
Even
little bit of
Rembrandt,
a
thank you for that, by the way. Who is my
what's that?
favorite character?
Yeah,
Rembrandt is my
Rembrandt.
favorite character. He just gets
Rembrandt.
pulled into shenanigans the same way I do, and I just have so much love for him and so much empathy.
Well, he was probably my least favorite character on the show, um, because there's that weird kind of
Where he gets
'80s,
sucked in at the
'90s,
last minute. He's the audience point of view. Yeah.
and he's the goof. He's
Yeah.
he's a total and utter goof, and he's like, what the hell is this? And it borderlines on parody, and it has that sort of weird, like, TV feel of the late '80s, early '90s, sort of thing, where they would do the opening of the show and, like, with the still frames of like the different characters, and so and so is like, you know whatever, with special guest star, Dom DeLuise. And but I really, one of the worries I had going back and reading these is I always felt, and they are, like, the covers of the Slider stories are really kind of grim in a way in the comics, and some of the storylines are kind of grim in a way.
Yeah, a lot more
But
grim than the TV show for sure.
right, but those are beautiful covers. Don't get me wrong; they're really beautiful covers, but they are
Mm.
very, like, abstract, moody things, and the stories inside actually balance. This story actually balances up things pretty well. There's action, there's suspense, but there's a lot of good character dynamics, I think, and good humor. And Rembrandt really brings out that humor, like,
Yes.
in that, as you said, that audience point of view.
Do you think those covers? Do you think the artists they had that an artist make those covers before they even knew what the plot of this story was?
It could be, because what do those have to do with the story?
Yeah.
They would work really well today. They seem like that's the zone of most today's comic covers. Don't seem like they're story driven at all. They seem like they're totally just 99% pinup shots
Oh,
or poster.
especially when you get into the variants and stuff.
Right. So this has nothing to do with the Zircurvians or Flatland or anything. This is like, I mean, that
Well,
second one looks like
obviously,
it's an
this
early.
is O'Connell. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, to some extent, sure, but but
Hey, is it true that Fabian was like editor in chief of Valiant at this time too, or did you know that going in, or?
I can't remember when he came in. He may have been in at that point. I mean, he did. He did become editor in chief, and I have a very good relationship with Fabian then and now. Sometimes we butt heads, but that's just because he's got a huge ego. I had a pretend huge ego, and you know he's very talented. I like to think I'm very talented, and so we would, we, we would have collisions, especially going back to, like, when he was doing, PR and sales, at
I just
Marvel. It's like,
happened to remember that and was wondering if you guys had crossed paths while you were doing
yeah,
Sliders.
we definitely did. I mean, and I am almost positive. You know, he was an influential figure in helping me get some work. No, you know, and foolishly, I probably should have done it more. Maybe that would have helped. But you know, I never discreetly called him up and said, you know, Fabian, I need some assignments. Can you help me out? I'm sure other people weren't shy about that, but I think because he respected me and respected the work, you know, to an extent, he was certainly not against me playing in the sandbox. And if people brought my name up, I'm sure he'd be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Or he may have even brought me up, you know, for some of the things. He may have been the one that pushed, because Jeff was the editor on
Yeah,
these, I
Jeff.
think.
Well, there's two Jeffs. There's
Who was the second
Gomez and
Jeff?
then Jeff. Well, Jeff Vita.
Yeah, so Jeff Vita is the one I met at the Magic Show. So that's, I apologize for not remembering his name. So he's the one I met at the Magic Show, and then through that is how I'm pretty sure is how I met Jeff Gomez. And you know, so yeah, I mean, Fabian was a good player, you know, in this or any multiverse.
Very cool.
Like, I don't know how these stories like don't get the attention they deserve, because it's like,
all Sliders fans know about these and love
well,
them.
I'm not even talking sliders in general. I'm just talking like tie-ins, because like with comics, you don't have to worry about a TV budget. So, you know, you don't have to worry about, oh, can we do this shot? Can we do this? It's like, as long as the artist can draw it, yeah, no, we can do whatever we want.
Well, that was the fun of the comic,
Yeah.
especially because you know, the TV show probably suffered
Well, the fun
somewhat.
fact is the first two seasons had a budget of about $1.5 million per episode, but this is when they were shooting in Vancouver, and then when they made the transition to the third and couple final, well, yeah, like the last couple of seasons, they moved to LA, and that budget dipped obviously, and then because
From being
and then it will also move to sci-fi, like it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
right. Not that you know too many details about this show, and not that you've
I
obsessed over
loved
this.
this show.
But I think there's, and I say this as a fan of the show and a fan of science fiction and a fan of, you know, this was still kind of, I think, a little bit on the gray zone of like, you were so desperate for any content that was like this, not like today where the spigot has been opened, but a show about multiverses and with cool other dimensions and such. You know, this was mother's milk right to a certain fan base, so you'd watch it regardless. But it was on the Fox network, which was fairly new and weird. And even though they were spending, you said, like 1.5 million, a lot of that was blown on early
Yes.
you know, CGI stuff, which was dodgy, you know, in a lot of ways. I mean, even the portal, you know, wasn't Stargate quality portal. It was, you know, a little cheesy. The dinosaur episode, I remember, or
Oh
where they,
yeah,
you
cringe
know,
every
was
time.
right. It was kind of like, oh, look, these are the guys who didn't even get in the door on the Jurassic Park job, but we got some dinosaur models. I mean, it was earnest. It was always earnest. They always played it straight, and you have to give them credit for that. That's hard to do, and not devolve into parody. But in the comic, Phil, to your point, you know, you could do a lot more, and you could even do, and remember
Say
consciously doing.
giant ant-sized beasts.
Right, exactly. But just for like a page or a scene, because like, why not? You know, like that's obviously a burden on the artist, but hopefully not too much of a burden where you could insert a scene like that and then vary it up. And I remember us trying to consciously do that to show the range of the multiverses. And what I really enjoyed about the show and was when they explored, you know, concepts like the like the Brainiac one, you know, where they went to the world and it was everyone was championing science people, right? It was like, it wasn't about sports figures, it was science was celebrated. And I thought, man, that's really cool and clever, and that's showing something different. That was like one of the, even though I like a lot of Multiverse of Madness in a way, to me that was like one of the great disappointments about that title and that movie is, what do we get? We get Dippin' Dots or a different type of ice cream is like, what's different about this dimension? Or
Madness.
right, it's sort of like, you know, come on, guys. Like, I was expecting, you know, them dipping in and out of multiple
creatures and evil,
yeah, or just
yeah.
strange things instead of, oh, stop red means go in this world or something. Oh my God, we're off the hook. But I think they did kind of go off the hook and explore some fun things in the show, and I think we tried to
J.
do that.
Edgar Hoover world is my favorite world.
Yeah, yeah. There's something. They definitely like as you again. You've done more digging into things, and you said the writers' room was a hellscape, but
Well,
it
because of Fox, at that time, Fox, they just, aired stuff out of order. Classic Fox move, right?
right,
If you know anything
right.
about Fox and like you watched, like I'm an X Files fanatic, Firefly, all the things, right? So like it's just
Hmm.
classic Fox executive shenanigans.
Right, right, and it didn't have that was the crossover point as well, where shows now you expect them to kind of unpack much more linearly,
Yeah,
and they're
serialized TV wasn't really a thing. They still wanted to be very
exactly.
episodic. I mean, it's 1995 to two. It ended February 4th, 2000 on the Sci-Fi Channel. So it's very
Hmm.
much a product of its time. Unfortunately, I
Yeah,
think this show is just like ahead of its time. Unfortunately,
yeah,
and I
it
wouldn't mind
definitely.
like that. Well, now that Tracy's gone, I don't think that Jerry would want to do a revival. But
I
the
thought I
revivals have
heard
been in the
something.
talks up until 2022. But once he passed away, they kind of stalled a little bit.
Okay, I thought I heard
But yeah, I'd
something
always been
about
hopeful
Jerry
until that
O'Connell
time.
wanting to do a relaunch or something.
With
Trying to.
As long as Tracy was on board, he was willing to do it.
Oh, oh, oh. Okay, that's. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that was the caveat.
But no, that's
and
funny that
also to bring back the character of Wade and give her justice as well. But I don't think Sabrina acts anymore.
Hmm.
I think she's very
Well,
much past that, unfortunately. But I think if they would have asked her, she probably would have,
it
because
could
it
be a
got out of control once he left, once Tracy
right.
was out.
That could be a, but
As you
that
can
could be
see,
a.
my title is Justice for Wade, so
I think
very upsetting storyline for me.
that could be a good Cobra Kai, play on it though. Even if you should bring her back in one multiverse, where, you get a chance to do her justice. It's like the side characters they would continually bring back across that show, which was quite brilliant.
or if you don't do a series, do a movie, something. But
Yeah, you'd have to
I
really.
mean, Netflix is a thing now. That's what I was so excited for. Like when Netflix was starting to do original stuff, and I
Hmm.
really heard it really ramp back up in 2019. But of course, because of COVID, a lot of things fell out, and then
Right,
Tracy passed away, and I was just like, oh man,
right.
I still hope
Yeah, it's
Jerry got the go from Tracy, so I still have hopes for it. He is very passionate. He went on to write try to write a comic book for
he
Sliders
did
and stuff
write he
like
did
that.
write one of the comics,
Yeah.
and that I took that very hard. It was like, what the fuck. Um, I remember saying to Jeff, it's like, well, do I get a walk on the show? Like, he's taking my money out of my pocket, and I was
And then
72%
that
serious
last one
about it.
never came out, even though it got solicited. I was just so sad about the whole end
Well,
of the
the
Sliders
last
universe.
one, um, we're jumping ahead in the sliders queue. And again, this is one of the things lost to the hard drive fail. Was I had pitched and it was accepted. I think there was the Sliders Quantum Leap crossover, and
I
Oh,
that was
who do we have to fight?
I mean that was like a cool. I'm getting chills just saying it out loud. Um, and we had they had said quantum leaps. Of course, in a quantum leap, and so I pitched that. As I said, I had to pitch all of these, and I cannot remember the particulars of it, but it was a a crossover, and it was I remember it being a pretty cool idea, and I remember them liking it, and I think it had been greenlit, and then it just all went away. So but that would have been
curse you,
a
hard
really
drive
fun.
crashed. Curse you.
Yeah, I would love to have known the details. Like I
I mean,
would
we would have.
remember the
Okay,
details.
that's one of the things when my time machine gets working. I'm just gonna slip a note.
I mean, if contact Jeff, I mean, I could contact Jeff too, but I could not imagine he has any of that stuff filed away or left over.
Hell, we would have did a live read of that thing. Come on.
Exactly.
So it wasn't
That's so
written. It was
interesting.
just the pitch. It was the pitch document, which would have been the
Even
entire.
pitch documents are super fascinating to me.
Yeah,
So
and it would have been the story. It was these pitch documents weren't when I wrote them at least. They weren't. There were outlines for the story. There were outlines for. It wasn't like what if they jumped in and fought a bunch of guys who came from a two-dimensional world. What about that? It wasn't a 2-line thing. It was like beat by beat, story by story, pretty much outlining what the storyline of the comic would be across the 2 or 3 or 4 issues or whatever it was.
Yeah, because again, I was going to play off what Lilith was saying. This show was ahead of its time. I think it's definitely ahead of its time, like effects wise. Because again, if they tried to do that on the TV show back then, I don't think it was going to look that
well,
good.
But I think that was part of its problem too, though. Was and you have to, and again, I'm giving them credit. You push ahead of its time, and it looks cheesy, and the unwashed masses are going to back away from it. Like, what the fuck is this? I mean, Babylon 5 is like the perfect example. I love Babylon 5. I love, as I watched that more and more and got into that, and then what they were doing and all the pieces coming together at the end. I think that's truly epic storytelling. But there are parts of that show that make early Doctor Who look like the Sistine Chapel, and they were pushing the boundaries on CGI effects. Some of their sets just looked like, look, we rolled this in on the wheels, and you can still see the crack between the wall and the floor, and it just has that cheese ball look, which you are willing to accept as a science fiction fan. That was sort of like the price of entry. So I think that Sliders may have suffered from that, being ahead of its time and pushing against it, which I get, right? You wanted that dinosaur thing. You wanted that what if Lilith, right? Even though it makes you cringe, you still want that. Where are my giant ants? Where are my, my dinosaur worlds or whatever else?
I always thought that they would come back as an animated cartoon. Like that was kind of my hope. And I think that would have kind of eliminated a lot of that. But
right,
again, adult animation really wasn't a thing outside of like The Simpsons back then.
Yep.
So
Yep. No, that's true.
let alone a sci-fi animated show.
And I guess the comic didn't do well enough to justify continuing to do a comic without the TV property to support it.
Well, also, Valiant and Acclaim underneath that kind of just also as well, just kind of one of those things, unfortunately.
Right. Everybody suffered from jumping into the pool with their own multiple multiverses, or universes rather, and then when all that kind of collapsed on itself, that became problematic to then be able to support other fringe projects like this or other things.
Am I like the only weirdo? Like, do people come up to you and talk about this like when you're at cons and stuff, or am I just
it doesn't come up that much, but it does come up occasionally, and when it does, then the people are obviously totally into it. There's never an instance where somebody comes up and says, "Did you work on like a Sliders thing or something like that?"
Like I said, the Sliders fans know these comics.
Yeah, I mean they're into it, and they're they'll be chapter and verse, and they'll be enthusiastic about it, and I was I was really happy with the work. I was pleased to always work on them.
Really good. It just feels like really like it could be an episode of the show. Honestly,
yeah, I remember there was a good Bible. Tracy Torme had written the Bible, for the show. I remember being impressed with that and trying to, as I always did, try to do justice to that, trying to honor that work and using that as a bridge of my own, into his world and trying to do, what he was after. That's why I remember that conversation, excuse me, with him and Jeff and whoever else was on there, being, important, because you got a sense of the guy's commitment, to the world. And I kind of foolishly maybe thought there'd be further conversations where he'd weigh in more, and whether he just was disinterested or didn't have the time. Those didn't happen, but that was a good way to kind of really get a sense of the creator's commitment to it. And sometimes you worked on licensed properties and you had nothing except it was a licensed property. And I think here we did get a chance to do justice to it. We didn't get a lot of interference, if any interference at all. Whereas Greg Wright, I don't know if you guys did your show with him yet or not, but
yeah, we did.
You did? Well, you could have lit the fuse on RoboCop, and he would have went off, for the whole hour plus because he
You
edited.
did
No,
make
no.
mention of that.
Yeah.
Oh well, I mean
Briefly.
that's the other end of the spectrum, where that should have been a home run comic book, right? Written by people who like comic books, created by people who like comic books, and it should have been the easiest transition over to a great comic book, and all he got was horrifying interference at every turn.
Suits sometimes, man.
Yeah, and
Oh yeah,
people
I think the biggest thing he said is like they were like, "Oh, can he not have like this spike come out?" And he was like, "Wait, what?"
right. They were trying to turn it into a kiddie cartoon, and it's like it's fucking RoboCop.
I was from the company that gave you Wolverine. They're like, "Oh, can he not have a spike come out of his
Right.
arm?" It's like, oh,
right, and the spike, which is primarily like a data
Yeah.
entry thing, and occasionally stabbing people,
Penetration. They don't like
yeah.
it.
Oh,
There you go.
well, they're on their own. Yeah, I would have loved reading this book at the time in the '90s. I didn't know this was even a thing, especially if I'd known you were writing it. I would have been like, yeah. I feel like, especially back then, like TV or movie tie-ins, like
They were kind of
unjustly,
frowned upon.
they
It
were all
wasn't
like
a
painted with the same
novelization.
brush. I think sometimes we're like, it's not
They
like
were no doubt 75% shit. I mean, and I will, and that speaks as somebody who worked on a few of them, but I didn't try to do them as shit.
Yeah.
Maybe nobody does, but I think some people did. I mean, there were
Sometimes it's
definitely,
corporate slop, and there's a place for that too.
but you also have to think about from an editorial point of view. A lot of times these are bought by whatever the suits, or because there's, hey, movie company pitch, we're doing this. Do you guys want to license it? We're going to do X amount of promotion from the movie side. You can ride that wave. And it's handed then to editorial, or was handed to editorial, almost as an afterthought. Nobody wants to work on it because everybody wants to be working on the real characters, right? I want to be working on X-Men, Spider-Man, and all this kind of stuff. So it gets to the lowest editor on the totem pole. This is not Sliders, mind you, but this is sort of like licensed properties in general in the 80s, 90s. Handed to the lowest editor on the totem pole, who forgets about it pretty much because they're working on their other titles until the week before it has to go out. And so therefore it gets, assigned out, even if it's to a talented team, it is last minute shit. And so everybody's just like, it's a money grab, and nobody expects anything to happen with it. And that was not the case with Sliders, right? Sliders was treated like a real comic and with real attention. And that's what we try to bring to it. And I always try to bring that for the most part. Strange Days, the movie adaptation of that was like done over a weekend, because that's when
Wow.
Can you do this over the weekend? You adapt the whole friggin' 120-page screenplay into a script. It's like,
wow.
I guess I can.
Okay, put a pin in that. Put another in that couch.
But that's horrible. I mean, that's a
yeah.
I can't imagine reading that and coming away where I felt rereading this, where it's like, oh, this is cool. And
well, that's why I think like a lot of people weren't checking a lot of the tie-ins out,
right.
because some of them
Well,
it was
they were
just
pretty hard to find too, to be kind of
they
honest.
were, but like a lot of them, like they would just like adapt the script for that, like one of the episode, not Sliders, but like something. It would be like, oh, we adapted an episode of the TV show, or we adapted the script of some, whatever movie it's based
Right,
on.
right,
So,
right,
Yeah,
right,
like
right.
Actually, the novelization of Sliders is pretty cool because it's based on the unaired pilot that they made him edit. So I like stuff
really?
like that. Like some novelizations are really, really cool because you get some of the extra tidbits and stuff, and then you have
Right.
the Star Wars novelization.
Right.
Anyway,
But that's
which
another.
has a little too much of the author's input for my liking.
But that's I think also part of the sci-fi audience cash grab again of that time period where you didn't have a lot of that stuff going on, wasn't available. Genre stuff maybe wasn't as available or easily available as we'd all have liked it to have been. So you'd see a novelization of something and you'd grab it, right? And it was wasn't necessarily bad, but it wasn't necessarily good. Or if it was, and the best sometimes you can hope for was, yes, it told the story I saw in the movie, and because I don't have a VCR or anything yet, I get to relive the movie. in an affordable fashion as many times as I want.
I never thought about that as a point. I literally, as a kid, only thought of it as a cash grab. But I guess I grew up with like easy access to like VHS, DVD.
Well, she
So
was the rich kid in the neighborhood. Everyone came to her house to play with the cool shit. So
Nintendo 64, a little GoldenEye action.
Right, right, right. Yeah, because I
That's a
mean,
great point.
VCRs were not.
Is that what novelizations have fallen out of favor? You think maybe?
I don't know. I mean, could be. I mean, there's limited. More. I don't. I hadn't thought about it until I just spouted that out. But that's sort of like that. That that's a feeling I think I had. When when I would see a novelization or something like that, it would it would spark that in me. I really liked Alien. Let me get the novelization of it. And if it's somebody like an Alan Dean Foster or somebody like that had written it, it might be a high quality novelization. But it wasn't always him. It was somebody else. And then you're rolling the dice. But at least you got to relive it if you didn't have,
And if you're
even if
lucky,
you
it
had a
gets cool
VCR.
tidbits.
Right. And even if you had a VCR, you still had to rent the movie, right? It wasn't as easy to copy the movie unless you had two VCRs, and maybe you did, Lilith, if you're the rich kid in the neighborhood. But but
No way, I was talking my parents into two.
I know. Now we're going crazy.
well, some of those novelizations, like I remember the one for the original Michael Keaton Batman, like sometimes the novels would come out before the movie, so like you could feel
And
extra
that's kind of
special.
the point too, to get you kind of hyped
Yeah.
because you're seeing it
Yeah,
in your mind,
Right.
and then you're like, oh, okay, like I can't wait to see this actually, like how that
and
plays out.
and
Because some
11 year
people have aphantasia
and
and
11
can't see anything in there.
and then there's an 11-year-old me telling all my friends, I know it's exactly what's getting in the movie. So
Right, right. Some of those were like the proto like Marvel trailers though, because they would include scenes that would never make it
Yep.
into the
yes,
movie itself. Like where's that scene? I'm looking forward to that, and it would never happen.
All right, my big question is: are we going to get a shout out, Lilith, when he starts like 3D printing the remote from Sliders?
Oh wow! Is there a 3D
Uh
model of
oh!
the
Oh God!
He's gonna go look for the file
I'm
right
gonna go
now.
look right now.
All right, I'm doing damage control right now, Mrs.
Check Reddit
Chichester.
first,
Mrs.
obviously.
Chichester, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Blame Phil. This won't work. It's all his
And
fault.
there is,
Oh,
yes,
no.
indeed. You can. Yep, you can like create your own little like sliders
I just need a
things.
little crow mag, just a little 3D printed crow mag.
It's pretty cool. I mean, listen, like it's the golden day of like cosplay and and props and stuff like that. If you've got it in mind to design that, or somebody have probably designed something, for anything you want there. So there are definitely sliders, remotes.
Oh, I mean, if you can imagine, you could like 3D print like a case and then put like like a digital display on it. I mean, people go nuts.
Oh yeah, people have done the entire. You guys know Fallout, like the video game and
Oh
the
yeah.
TV show. I mean, people have done endless amounts of props. From the Pip Boy, wrist thing to weapons to little bobblehead things. It's crazy. A lot of dust collectors come out of 3D printing, but it's fun to watch it happen.
I have to say there were some great lines in these issues. What was that glandular line? I really liked it. Young lady, I'll have you know my size is a glandular.
But
And then
and thank you. And
when they got back to
I felt I got the characters, and rereading it. That's, to me, it was I picked on myself, and mostly rightly so. I think where things don't work. I think this one works.
yeah, I
And
thought that
it
was a
picked
great balance, really truly.
it.
As a
The
super fan of sliders, like I hats off.
Thank you. No, that means the world, honestly, because you are obviously a super fan of sliders, and I'm sure you'd be polite to some extent, but if I botched the job, which I would not have wanted to do, that you would have let me know. But
I could
that's what
tell
you
that you
wanted.
were a fan of the show. Even before I met you and I was reading these, I was like, yeah, this guy's definitely watched sliders.
Oh yeah,
And not
no,
just
I
like
was
it's a
definitely.
homework assignment. Like, sometimes you just kind of cursory, you're just like it's on in the back. No, I could tell you
I
you
mean,
like the show.
in all honesty, watching it, sometimes was, oh, man, but that was that wasn't a ding on the show. It was just a nature of like where shows were at a certain point. Certain
Yeah.
TV shows felt a little cheesier. The pacing was, Love Boat.
And that's why the professor left. He just kind of didn't agree with the direction the show was going. He got drawn in by the possibilities of the show and the
Right.
science of
And
it.
that's the core of it. That's the soul of the show. The soul of the show is those four characters in that way. It's like, I had Quinn, overcommit to the relationship here with Wade a little bit, because who knows if we're ever going to come back to it. He makes some lip contact and professes affection and stuff, but the tension between them is an important factor. The tension between Arturo and Quinn, is another factor. And then Rembrandt being that foil of like, what the hell,
Do you hear
and
yourself?
yeah. And
Also, I
he
think it's in
turns
the next issue. Why can't we ever land on a mattress?
yes, yeah, exactly. Like can we ever land in a mattress world? And just like one like the end scene where they land on Fat World or whatever, it's sort of like that's not a whole story. You're never going to come back to that. There's nothing to explore there, but that's the fun of it, in that you get to sort of open up these different possibilities, and it's not just like 1 degree off. It's some weird little factor like that to kind of spark the imagination and play it out in a fun way. So, and the one thing I noticed from a writing point of view, which was a little different for me, was I made a lot of use of what I would say fun, frothy third person captions, which was not typically something I did, to bridge certain scenes and talk up a lot of things. Most of the time I would do like these internal monologues, or I do overwritten, burdensome, third person captions. But these for me were maybe of their time, but they worked really well, to kind of explain certain things or bridge certain things. And I think Dick, Giordano did a really nice job,
Yeah. So, did you
illustrating.
ask for him? Was he already attached to the project? How did that come? That was very surprising looking back on
Yeah,
it.
no, that was a win on Jeff's part, or Jeff, Fabian, whoever like brought him in. And I don't think I had much dialogue with Dick on that end of it, but that was a real thrill, to suddenly hear that Dick Giordano is going to be the artist on this. But there were some unusual, difficult concepts to visualize here, especially like these 2D guys, and then they're morphing into 3D, and sometimes the visualization of that was a little tricky, and that's probably why some of the characters are saying certain things. Oh my God, they're coming out of the walls, and but that's okay. That wasn't like some instances of where I got paired with an artist who just didn't pay attention. I think Dick did a really great job, and a lot of credit goes to him in the storytelling he did to help me be able to tell the story and then be inspired to
I
write the
really love
dialogue
the
and such that I did.
silhouettes in these 2
Yeah.
issues. Just such great work.
Oh yeah.
And I if you really feel like an intellectual, I do recommend picking up Flatland and reading it. So
Pinch it.
All right. Well, you were saying you would have liked that walk on the show. So
yeah.
if you could have been there for a quick little spot, or if you had been like, if they would have given you a whole episode, like who would you want? Would you want to, if they would have offered you like a villain role for an episode, would you have taken it? Or
I would have tried, literally, I would have taken anything. I would love to have had the chance to do a walk on the show, but I don't know that they were that. I mean, I think Jerry O'Connell was certainly a fan enough of the comics and the possibility
Oh,
of comics
really?
to then wanted. Well, he did the comic,
Oh yeah.
so I mean, not necessarily
he's
of
very
my
vocal about
comics,
these. Yeah.
but I think of the fact of there being a comic and wanting to play in that
Now he's
space.
a real nerd celebrity. Just letting you
Yeah.
know.
So I would that would be cool to actually run into him at a show, and make that connection. But so I should probably pack a sliders with me in case he's on any guest list of something coming up. But I think there's one. I don't think it's in this sliders. one of the future sliders. I know I did a gag about the pennies under the porch somewhere. I remember them
Ah,
sliding. They slide through a world and they don't have any money, and he remembers something about there being pennies under a porch somewhere, and they go and they grab the pennies that he buried. That his character in Stand By Me buried under the porch. So I was
yeah.
always very proud of that inside joke.
Yeah, I want to say that just in the light of like how the internet now is, there's a couple of really great sites for like sliders resources, the comic books as well as the TV show. You should go out, find them, and download them.
Oh, the comics themselves, like
Yeah. Or
yeah.
like
Oh,
just
really?
information behind it. I think it's on I want to say Earth Prime or something like that. They have a lot of really good information about like stuff like the comic books. And then there's like
Oh,
they
okay.
still have the press releases, which are always really interesting. The early like the mid 90s press release, like they're very detailed. So like if
Oh,
you're like a
wow.
Sliders fan and you want to know like especially like the first season specifically, those press releases are really great resources for information that you might not know.
Well,
So yeah.
I need topics for upcoming newsletters, so I got some slider stuff to dig up.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised that it was still online because again, this show started off in 1995. So
Well, I think there's a dedicated, like you said, there's a dedicated fan
yeah, there's a
base.
couple forums and
You're,
stuff still
yeah,
active.
right. So, I mean, there was, I don't know if it's keep the hope alive. I don't know if it's ever going to come back, because now you're so rife with multiverse bullshit.
Hey,
But this was
let
good.
me know if Jerry O'Connell is on a Blue Sky. I'll skeet him something.
I mean, this, it's frustrating. Again, you guys always do me a gift with these shows because you do get me to revisit things that I don't always think about, and so this is a nice walk down this. But I think, in credit to the show itself and the concept itself, this is multiverse done right.
Yeah.
Right. This is playing with. I'm talking about, well, the comics certainly, because of course we did a nice job in the comic, but I think overall Sliders did it right, and it's just such a stark contrast to the meh blah, awfulness of how Marvel, to
Again,
me,
there's
botched.
so many people that specifically reference this style of multiverse from Sliders. Like there's DC references and Zero
Hmm.
Hour. There's I think like Marvel Exiles also references this kind of form. It's like so many. So
Right,
yeah.
right.
Well, again, I think
But
it helps that like the whole concept of Sliders is the multiversal stuff is built into it. It's like the Marvel stuff. It's like, oh, what do we need for like Phase 5 or whatever? I know, multiverse, and it's
right,
it's
but
like,
then you do nothing right with it, which is
no.
incredible to me. It's just you have
Like they
this
took big
tab.
swings in the show. Is the
Yeah,
point. Yeah.
yeah, and you have to. I mean, you have to play that out. It can't be subtle, but there's an inherent drama in there of are they ever going to get home too, right? They're sort of trapped in this,
Well, spoilers,
this
they
in
did,
this.
but she fixed the gate, the monster.
Damn it!
Broke
Yeah,
my heart. Broke my little heart.
that's like a weird sci-fi trope in the 90s. Like we were just talking about, the original Quantum Leap didn't end
Oh my
satisfactory.
god!
Although I've
Oh
read
my!
stuff about that, like that was only supposed to be like a season finale, not a series finale, and then they just kind of tweaked it at the because I don't know if they got like little notice that they were ending it, so they just kind of had to tweak a season finale to make it a series.
I don't know. I always took that ending in such different ways. Like it was such a sad end card in the way they sort of put it
Yeah.
up. But did it always? But I also then took it to sort of meant that he didn't want to come back. Like he sort of accepted
Yeah,
his
yeah.
mission, and he just kept doing it, to keep doing it because that's sort of what he was
Which is
meant
very
for.
unexpected for that time to end something on such a bittersweet note. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
it's
felt
not
very.
like say elsewhere crazy, but like it's so bittersweet for the fans. Like you kind of just want a happy ending for him because you spent all that time with
And
him.
Right.
especially after like they introduced like he has a wife, but he can't remember her. But it's like, yeah, meanwhile that wife's just sitting there the rest of her life waiting for him to come back, and he never does. And
I know, but it just felt so. Like on one hand, it was sort of disappointing, but on the other hand, it felt very profound, which I don't
yeah,
know if did they intend it that way. I've never dug into the
Sometimes you gotta
whatever.
let go of authorial intent. Honestly, just so
No,
you can
that's
have some
true
peace of
too.
mind.
And but that was my impression of it. So that is that's all that matters, right? The audience
Yeah.
impression
yeah.
is what matters. And to me, that sort of elevated the show which again had that goofy quality of that era of television, and Mike Post, style theme music, and starring, freeze frames. But that took the show from me to like a solid 6.5, 7 to 9, plus. Like that one decision to end it that way.
I just love that you actually pitched a crossover between Sliders and Quantum. That is so awesome. And I just
I wish.
like I said, if I ever invent my time machine, you're gonna get a little note. Hey, back up your hard drive on NXT.
I know. I would.
Now.
Trust me, that was like, I would. There's a couple things that would probably take priority with the time machine right now, all things considered, with the world.
Yes,
But
like I said,
but
like
that
my
might
third
be
or fourth stop.
that might be that would definitely be a stop along the clicking the dial.
But yeah, I felt like shows like Sliders and Quantum Leap were like kind of interesting and probably held people's interest. Just because it's like, except for their main cast, whether it's main characters, 4 main characters, it's like, besides that, everything else can change. It changes every episode. Like you have different people come in.
As long as they're in San Francisco, which I think San Francisco is interesting, but like I never thought they really explored it enough. Unfortunately, well, it was shot in Vancouver, so they really couldn't. But
that's where the portals kept opening, Lilith. They don't need to be
it was
traveling.
always a park, or
was the portal only universe?
Well, it started off as like the same place, right? And then like it expanded as it started to get more wonky and stuff. Like
so that's what I remember. Right, it was always the same location initially, but then as time went on, it sort of like it could kind of dump you.
Synced out of phase, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was probably a good dramatic structure decision to make.
Yeah. But it's like San Francisco. Then, of course, we finally get away from San Francisco, and then I miss San Francisco. So what do I know as a fan? Don't listen to fans.
Well, if you're in a city of that uniqueness, I mean,
it's a little hard.
You should explore it, right? You should play it out, because San Francisco
is now not so much, but back then it was beautiful before the tech bros took it over.
Right, but yes. But I'm going to say there's
places.
There's 50 different neighborhoods within San Francisco, right? 50 different zones within San Francisco to sort of like spread yourself across and feel like you're in almost like a different town, different city.
And going to Oakland.
So
yeah, no, I hope we get to talk more Sliders. But I thought that this was like a great start to them, and like, so what was the cadence? Was it just like, did they have like a plan for it? Did they want like a lot, or was it just 2 at a time? Or
you can see there were always like 2, 3 at a time, or maybe one of them was like an oversized one shot. So they were totally intermittent. There wasn't a steady spigot of Sliders, for it, but they felt regular-ish enough that they would crop, kind of like my assignments nowadays with some business. They would crop up on a regular basis, every couple months or whatever. I seem like to get a call and we're, do you want to pitch another Sliders thing? Do you want to pitch another Sliders thing? Of course, I always said yes, and I think I won them all. Like I don't think there was one.
Who you were maybe pitching against?
No, they would never tell you that. Or maybe it was just, maybe I was the only one, that was pitching, but they just wanted me to pitch. There wasn't, but it was definitely a, will you pitch an idea? Not, you've got the assignment, let's start working on the story. And the first phase of it is this. It was always pitch the story. Yep, we want to do this storyline.
I mean, maybe after the first one, maybe they were just like, you know what, Dan always wants to do it. Dan tells a good story, so let's just
play with his mind a little bit.
Just give it to Dan every time, yeah.
Well, that would have been a different cadence, though, Phil. Like if that had been, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't. I mean, I was definitely on the list, but it wasn't like the call came in from Jeff or whomever and said, "Hey, we got new Sliders. Throw us your ideas and we'll get started on it." It was a pitch the story, and then yes, we've accepted the story. Now you've got the assignment for sure. Go and write it. So whether I was just pitching the story and they wanted to see where I was at, or I was pitching against other people, which is a possibility too. That wasn't clear. But there was never an instance where I pitched a story and they called me back and said, no, you didn't get the assignment. So I definitely was in a good zone with it. And then after a point, I was a proven sliders guy on this. I got the book, I got the characters, I knew what to do with them, and so forth. So there was certainly some editorial, hopefully easy thinking there.
I just never know if that's like corporate bullshit where it's like, oh yeah, he's our go-to sliders guy, but don't let him know that he might want more money or something.
Exactly.
If it was like the X-Men, maybe that would have been a mental thing, but this was sliders. I mean, so even if I was like, I'm your go-to sliders guy, yeah, well, that's good, Dan. Go get yourself a lollipop, and treat yourself to a lollipop. And what does that mean? It's like, but they were fun books to work on. They were good characters. They were cool stories. We would later on.
To work in.
Yeah,
Sure.
and we would over time unpack, more things of the characters, and try to make them more.
Did you try to make it like have like a slight continuity within your stories, or?
Yeah, I think we did that. I think and definitely I know we got more into like their backgrounds and their families and such. So there was a consistency of thinking about what we were doing, but they were definitely episodic, because they weren't coming out.
Yeah.
Like they were coming out semi-regularly.
They weren't coming out.
They weren't coming out.
Yeah.
Right. So 2 issues here, the 64-page or 48-page one or whatever here. So too much of a spread to sort of try to thread things out, but there might have been references back to certain things.
Very cool.
Yeah, it seemed like almost like with some stuff in the 90s, like that was the model they were started going to. It's like a lot of franchises just got like limited series after limited series. Like, I mean, look what Marvel did with Venom. I mean, and I think half the 90s,
well,
Venom miniseries after Venom. Like we said, it was like we're surprised. Like Venom was so hot in the 90s, he can get his own ongoing.
They also want. I think the miniseries is more like a mental thing for fans, like a limited exclusivity. You don't want them to get too used to having
and they
it around
and they did
until
do
it's a
different
known
writers
proven
sometimes.
quantity.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's also the proto version of this nonsense they do now, where it's like, let's relaunch Daredevil with #1. How many friggin' like if you did a limited series of Venom and they did another limited series of Venom, you always had a Venom #1, right?
Yeah.
In circulation. So Venom, Extreme, Venom,
all new, all different.
all new, all different. But you got a lot of #1s,
Yeah.
So that was an easy way to prototype that. And before they got to this, where now they relaunched Daredevil with every new creative or whatever. I'm picking on Daredevil for some reason, but they get to issue 50, and then suddenly it's like back to #1.
Good job, Dan. Hit the algorithm. Daredevil.
Exactly. Throwing a couple Daredevils. I see him right there to the left on the screen.
Well, I sure would love for a Sliders comic book to be born again.
Oh my god! Nice. Well done. You were holding on to that the whole time.
Note, good night, everybody.
So like yes. Charlie as Quinn, Vincent D'Onofrio as Arturo, yeah, just
wait, no, you're cooking. You're on to something. Hold on.
Deborah Ann Wool is Wade,
yeah, we're
exactly.
in that multiverse, yeah.
Exactly, right. Or Jerry O'Connell is Matt Murdock, go the other direction. John Rhys Davies is the Kingpin. That would work.
John Rhys Davies did play the Kingpin.
That's right. Where did he play the Kingpin?
Was that Trial of the Incredible Hulk, that TV movie?
Okay, right.
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
I mean,
yeah,
it happened.
You just made the spirit of Charlie Esther happy by mentioning that movie, Phil.
Yes.
All good stuff. Awesome.
All right.
This was fun. Thanks for taking this for journey into the multiverse. And and I will get working on my sliders newsletter.
Looking forward to it. We're subscribed.
Boy, I wonder what we're going to talk about for the next 2 months.
I don't know. You pick.
Go. I picked. Yes. Well, next time we're gonna cover Daredevil 292 and 293. Dan's first arc on Daredevil.
Oh my god. All right.
Don't be hard on yourself.
No, I like Daredevil. I mean, I don't have a lot of problems with Daredevil until we get,
We got you
later
over
on.
that. Okay, that's good.
292, no, there's definitely places I'll pick, but 292, 293 was, jumping into the deep end and,
Yeah.
figuring stuff out with Lee. And so, I mean, it wasn't quite, hadn't quite gelled yet, but it was,
It was day one.
there's good, yeah, it's good stuff. There's good stuff in there. I'll dig out my, the what, the actual thing I do still have copies of, which is a miracle, which is the actual Daredevil pitch. So I still have that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we'll
We
we'll
need to see
read
Is
that.
it
quotes from that.
framed?
It should be. I finally put up all my Daredevil original art, which isn't really a lot, but I finally we have a family room downstairs that just had like some rando like artwork hanging on the wall, and I finally just said to myself, why am I not hanging up all this stuff? So I did make a Daredevil wall, kind of a bunch of stuff. So,
But
He's
I think
feeling the ideas. Danielle's gonna kill him.
but I think that would be a good for the, I don't want to tell you what to do, but for the blog or whatever, just on the initial Daredevil pitch, because again, I mean, I think that would be interesting to people, especially now. It's like how you pitch a Daredevil script for get a job.
yeah. I mean, maybe I'll switch that up. I've been thinking about that for a while. I
I think the
was
time
kind of holding
March
that
and
back.
April, the time is good.
Yeah, the timing's right. Yeah, you're right. Don't hold off on it much more. But I was kind of thinking about like if I ever made the newsletter like a subscription thing, but I could make it a subscription thing without taking anything else away. So
I want to see it anyway, because I know after our talk with Greg, when you got the job, Greg was pitching, I guess his pit,
and until he brought that up on that conversation, I had never known he had pitched that book.
Oh, wait,
So
really?
Yeah. I mean,
And he said he pitched it. You got the job first. He was like, "Son of a bitch." Then he was like, he must have seen
It
yours.
all worked out. He got to do a Daredevil.
Well, he said
series,
he even
so.
read Dan's, and he's like, "Oh, Dan's was better." So he's like, "Yeah."
I mean, it's still, yeah. There had to be a lot of people pitching, even though Daredevil wasn't, on the View in those days. It was, it was still Daredevil. So I still think the fact I got it is not a miracle. I must have been doing something right. So for Ralph to pick me out of the bunch.
Maybe too much profanity in Greg's script. I don't know.
It could have been. Yeah, just fucking give me the job, Ralph. Yeah, that's right.
I think Marcus said, yeah, he's like, Greg's like the swears more than any other human being.
And he's dialed it down significantly over the years. So I have to remind him.
Phil.
I have to remind him of like, who are you like again? It's like, are you the god of, are you the god of hammers, or are you the god of,
Or you the god of profanity? Oh,
exactly. I am the god of profanity. Yeah.
Gonna lay that title on Greg, the god of profanity.
Exactly.
You gotta listen. Oh god, you gotta listen to that interview. I think it's on our YouTube right now, but it'll be out soon. But I was trying to be polite. I kept calling him sir. He's like, stop calling me sir. I said, okay, ma'am. What do you want me to call you?
Like,
exactly. Exactly.
He's used to teaching kids. He's like, call me dude. I'm like, okay, brah. What else you got?
I cannot. It's yeah. My first exposure to Greg, I can't say, even though we're fairly loose with language on this program.
Oh, you can't even say it here.
I cannot even say it here. The first day I met him, was just like,
I'm a writer and I learn new words.
Oh my fucking God. He just said that out loud to her. Who is this person? And so, and we're still friends. So it's all
right. All right. Promote the newsletter.
Promote. All right. Sign up for the pre-launch on my Kickstarter project at tinyurl.com/Axel's Infernal. Second issue of A Cool Trip to Hell. Thank you very much. Look at that. Go there. You don't have to commit to anything right now, but we need to get the numbers up. So please go check that out. Also, my newsletter is back up and running and on a regular basis. It's storymaze.substack.com. Lots of information about this particular comic, as well as all other good things kind of going on in storytelling. Right now, we're running a werewolf story that I was inspired to write by Mark Nelson, and having some fun with that, as well as some other behind-the-scenes stuff. End of March, if you are in Richmond Virginia area or want to travel a bit, I will be 4 days at the GalaxyCon show there.
Oh wow.
So come visit me and say hi, and have some cool tchotchke things, and the 3D printer is humming and running on some fun little odds and ends. That will be there, and that will be in that whole. So, maybe the sliders remote, but definitely some Daredevil Born Again related items, since that will be right in the zone then and there. And just look in your Diamonds previews, if there is still a Diamonds previews catalog. I believe Black Box Comics has finally let the cat out of the bag on this new 5-issue series called Risk, which is a kind of a cyber thriller that comes out at the end of April, I believe April 23rd or 24th, which is a cool futuristic little adventure, big adventure. So take a look for that.
I think we're gonna have to talk that in May.
Right
I
after,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, we could do like you could do a real time version of that if you guys dig that one. If Black Box will ever send me the preview copy that they want me to use to promote things, I could send that to you guys ahead of time.
Yeah. We could do it just like we did Black Armor. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be fun. We had a good time with that. So that's 5 issues starting then. It looks really good. That'd be interesting to unpack that, because visually it turned out much different than I expected it to be, which is not a bad thing, but it sort of shifts your approach to things in a way.
Well, yeah, I think you said that even on Black Armor with Netho. You're like, I sent him the notes, and what I got back was better than what I was in my head.
Oh yeah. Well, Netho is like, just like a whole universe unto himself. So I don't even know how that guy cranks beasts his ways through stuff. That was a gift beyond gifts. So that was terrific stuff.
Well, yeah.
So and
then
you've got Black Armor back in the comic. How would we not talk about that? In the regular comic,
not yet, but I think it's like another issue or two. It's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. So hell, that's like, as long as they don't chop it up with scissors, like I said before, that's got to be the greatest redemption arc in costume history. To go from nobody talking about it for 30 odd years to suddenly it's the
hot thing now. Yeah.
It's got the primo shape. I actually saw somebody had a custom Lego minifig, Black Armor one. So I've got to find out where that was from. Anyway, enough.
All right, kids. So yes, the Rockstar of Comics, DG Chichester, is going to be doing another tour. So go check him out.
All good, guys. Thank you again, as always. Wonderful way to spend a Saturday morning, and I will get back to my roots on Daredevil, and we'll hit that up in a month or so.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
All right, guys. Be well. Stay good.
Thank you, sir.
Another great conversation.
Yes. Oh, I knew I was gonna have to pull the trigger on sliders eventually. Lilith was gonna kill me.
And what a perfect time, 25 years.
Exactly. Exactly. And then we're gonna get some Daredevil next time. Yeah. Well, next 2 episodes. Yeah. And then the new comics.
New stuff. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a Chichester Renaissance. Yes.
Yeah, I'm really excited I hope everybody signs up for X-Men. I need that second issue.
Yeah. I already signed up. Yeah. So, yeah, kids. Again, if you love horror, if you love comics, love the writing of good writing. Yes, Axel's Infernal. All right. So, how about we promote us?
Well, promote away.
Again, especially for this show. If you want to send questions for Mr. Chichester, send them to CapesandLunatics@gmail.com. Or call the voice.
Better watch live and engage.
Exactly. 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. Yes, you can watch live on the Capes and Lunatics Podcast Network or Capes and Lunatics Podcast Facebook pages. So you can find us there. We're on Twitch.
Make sure you sub.
That's right.
Follow, whatever.
Yep. But yeah, again, if you want to send in thoughts, questions, again, you can even send in audio. Email me the audio. You can ask them your question in your own voice, so I don't mess it up. But you can find all episodes of the Chichester Chats and everything we do at CapesLunatics.wordpress.com. But yeah, go buy Dan's stuff. Go buy our stuff. Help support us at T Public in Spring. I feel like public television help support this show. Any other
Might
fine,
get a tote bag out of it. I don't know.
and other fine shows with dick jokes. Yes. And of course, you can also just be very kind and just ran the money on us through the Cash App link. Lil's favorite method.
Make it rain.
It's starting to not be a gentle suggestion, guys.
Gives you about the Billy Club, you kids. And of course, the Patreon, where again you'll get something for your money. Then I give you exclusive, uncensored content every month, and when you subscribe, you get the ability to tell us what to do for once. So, yes, request topics for us to discuss, as our friend Justin has done many times. So find that at patreon.com.
And at one time, Ray did it.
Well, me and Justin shamed him into doing that.
It still counts.
I know. Patreon.
Leave that sweet old man alone. Let him play with his deck on his YouTube channel.
Oh, that's right. Ray plays games on YouTube. Yes, Ray plays with his deck every episode, or other people's decks.
Oh, baby.
So yeah, patreon.com/CapesandLunatics. All right. And Lilith, you can find me and Lilith Hellfire.
You can find us skeeting away on Blue Sky.
That's right. And Capes Lunatics Podcast Network. So yeah, follow all us there. So all right, kids. Thank you for joining us. I'm like, talk music. Yeah. All right.
A lot of fun stuff in store for this year, so get on board or get left behind.
That's right. Two episodes of Daredevil with an actual Daredevil writer coming up here, and then a new comic, another new Chichester work. Yes. And I'm sure eventually we'll get back to more Slider stuff because Lil will demand it. Because Lil's demanded it. All right, kids.
Relatable content for me, man.
All right, kids, come back next time. And remember, keep Chichestering.
And chatting.
Making it a